What I'm going to share with you is something most people would never believe, and honestly, I wouldn't believe it myself if it hadn't happened to me directly. A Sasquatch saved my life in the Cascade Mountains. Not just saved me either, but spoke to me, communicated in clear words I could understand, and what that creature told me about the world, about people, about everything we think we know. It shattered every assumption I'd ever held about reality. My name is Rebecca, and I've been a wildlife photographer for 15 years, specializing in remote wilderness documentation. I'm someone who relies on evidence, on what my camera captures, on tangible proof. But after 3 weeks stranded in the backcountry with a being that science says cannot exist, being nursed back from the edge of death by hands that weren't human, I've had to rebuild my entire understanding of what's real and what isn't. It all started during a solo expedition in early October. The mountains were putting on their annual display, the maples turning brilliant shades of orange and crimson, while the evergreens stood dark and ancient against the changing landscape. There's a quality to the air that time of year that's hard to describe, sharp and clean, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and approaching winter. I was about 4 days into a 10-day trip, documenting the migration patterns of elk through a particularly remote valley that few people ever visit. The terrain in that region is unforgiving, all steep inclines covered in scree, narrow ridges with drops on both sides, and creek crossings that can go from ankle deep to chest high depending on recent rainfall. I'd been hiking since before dawn that morning, trying to reach a particular meadow where I'd seen elk congregating during a previous expedition. The route required traversing a series of rocky outcroppings, and I was moving carefully, testing each foothold before committing my weight. My camera bag was heavy on my back, probably heavier than it should have been, but I'd brought extra lenses and equipment because the light in that valley during autumn is something special, the kind of golden quality that makes every shot look like a painting. I was about 2/3 of the way across a particularly tricky section when I made the mistake that nearly killed me. There was a flat-looking rock that seemed stable, and I stepped onto it without testing it first. The moment my full weight landed, the rock shifted, sliding out from under me like it had been waiting for exactly that moment. My ankle twisted sharply to the right, and suddenly I was falling, tumbling down a slope that seemed to go on forever. I grabbed at bushes and rocks as I fell, but nothing held. My equipment bag was throwing off my balance, making every rotation more violent than the last. The fall ended abruptly when I slammed into a boulder at the bottom of a small gorge. I heard something crack, felt an explosion of pain in my left leg that was so intense my vision went completely white. I lay there gasping, unable to process anything except the agony radiating from my lower body. When the initial shock subsided enough for me to think, I tried to assess my situation. My left leg was clearly broken. The bone had snapped about halfway between my knee and ankle, and I could see the unnatural angle even through my pants. My right ankle was swelling rapidly, probably sprained badly, maybe fractured too. I'd landed in a narrow gorge, maybe 15 feet below the traverse I'd been attempting, with sheer rock walls on both sides and a small creek running through the bottom. I managed to pull my satellite phone from my vest pocket, but the screen was cracked, the device completely dead from the impact. My backup radio was in my bag, which had torn open during the fall, scattering its contents across the rocks. I could see the radio about 20 feet away, wedged between two boulders. 20 feet might as well have been 20 miles given my condition. Moving my left leg even slightly caused waves of nausea-inducing pain. My right ankle wouldn't support any weight at all. I was stranded at the bottom of a gorge in one of the most remote sections of the Cascades, with no way to call for help and no way to move. The first thing I did was try to calm down and think logically. Panic would kill me faster than my injuries. I took stock of what I had within reach. My camera bag had stayed attached to me, which meant I had some protein bars, a small water bottle, and my emergency first aid kit. Not much, but something. I dragged myself toward the creek, using my arms to pull my body across the rocky ground while keeping my legs as still as possible. Every movement was agony, but I needed water, and I needed to clean the cuts and scrapes I'd accumulated during the fall. It took me probably 45 minutes to cover the 10 feet to the creek. By the time I reached it, I was shaking from pain and exhaustion. I filled my water bottle and drank deeply, then used some of the water to wash the blood off my hands and face. My first aid kit had some basic supplies: gauze, antiseptic wipes, a few bandages, painkillers. I took 3 ibuprofen, knowing they wouldn't touch the pain from a broken leg, but hoping they'd help with the inflammation. The sun was starting to sink below the ridgeline, and the temperature in the gorge was dropping fast. Mountain gorges lose heat quickly once the sun disappears, the rock walls that provide shade during the day becoming cold radiators at night. I needed shelter, needed to get off the bare rock before I lost too much body heat. There was a small overhang about 15 feet upstream, a place where the rock wall jutted out enough to provide some protection from the elements. Getting there seemed impossible, but staying where I was meant certain hypothermia. I started the agonizing process of pulling myself upstream, using my arms to drag my body across the slick rocks while trying to keep my broken leg immobilized. The pain was constant and overwhelming, a white-hot lance that shot up my leg with every slight movement. I had to stop every few feet to rest and breathe through the waves of nausea. Twice I nearly passed out, my vision going dark around the edges, before I forced myself to stay conscious through sheer willpower. By the time I reached the overhang, it was nearly dark and I was trembling uncontrollably. I managed to wedge myself into a semi-protected position, my back against the rock wall, my legs stretched out in front of me. I pulled my jacket tighter around my body and tried to conserve what body heat I had left. The night stretched out before me like an eternity of suffering. My leg throbbed with a pain that seemed to have its own heartbeat. Every sound in the darkness made me flinch, made me think of bears or mountain lions, predators that would find an injured human an easy meal. I drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes waking to complete darkness, sometimes to the gray light of pre-dawn. When morning finally came, my situation hadn't improved. If anything, it was worse. My left leg had swollen to nearly twice its normal size, the skin tight and shiny, hot to the touch even through my pants. My right ankle was purple and black with bruising, and I couldn't feel my toes on that foot anymore. The pain had settled into a constant grinding ache, punctuated by sharp spikes whenever I moved even slightly. I ate a protein bar and drank more water from the creek, trying to keep my strength up, even though I had no appetite. I spent that day trying to figure out a way to signal for help. I had a small mirror in my camera bag, and I spent hours trying to catch the sun and flash it toward the sky, hoping some aircraft might be passing overhead. Nothing came. I tried yelling for help until my throat was raw, but the gorge swallowed my voice, containing the sound between its rock walls. As the second night approached, I started to accept that I might die here. My emergency contact wouldn't expect to hear from me for another week, and even then, they'd probably wait a day or two before raising an alarm. By the time anyone started looking for me, I'd likely be dead from exposure, dehydration, or infection from my injuries. That second night was when I first heard the footsteps. They came from somewhere above the gorge, heavy and deliberate, too heavy for a deer, too rhythmic for a bear. Bears shuffle and meander. These footsteps had purpose, direction. I lay in my little alcove, barely breathing, listening as whatever was up there moved along the edge of the gorge. Then I caught a smell, something strong and wild, like a combination of musk and pine and something organic I couldn't identify. The footsteps stopped almost directly above me. I could hear breathing, deep and slow, the breathing of something large. I pressed myself back against the rock wall, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my broken leg. Then the sound faded, the footsteps moving away through the forest, and I was alone again. I told myself it was a bear. Had to be a bear. What else could it be in these mountains? But the footsteps had sounded wrong for a bear, too steady, too measured. And that smell, I'd encountered bears before during my photography work, knew their particular scent, and this wasn't it. This was something else entirely. I didn't sleep much the rest of that night, every nerve in my body on high alert despite my exhaustion. The third day brought rain, a cold, steady drizzle that turned the rocks slick and filled the creek to rushing levels. My little overhang provided some protection, but I still got wet, and with the rain came a drop in temperature that had me shivering within hours. My leg was getting worse, the swelling spreading up toward my knee, the skin taking on a reddish hue that spoke of infection. Without proper medical treatment, I might lose the leg, even if I survived long enough to be rescued. The infection might spread to my bloodstream and kill me anyway. That afternoon, I heard the footsteps again. They came from the same direction as before, moving along the rim of the gorge. But this time, they stopped at a different point, somewhere behind me and to the left. I turned my head slowly, trying to see through the rain, and that's when I saw her. She was standing at the edge of the gorge, maybe 30 feet above me, looking down. The rain was falling around her in sheets, but she didn't seem to notice, standing there like a statue carved from the mountain itself. Even through the rain, I could see that she was enormous, easily 8 feet tall, maybe more. Her body was covered in dark fur, brown so deep it was almost black, matted and wet from the rain. Her shoulders were impossibly broad, her arms long and muscular, hanging past her knees. But it was her face that held my attention, flat and wide, with a heavy brow ridge over eyes that were watching me with unmistakable intelligence. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Time seemed to lose meaning in that moment, suspended between heartbeats. She tilted her head slightly, studying me the way I might study a particularly interesting bird through my camera lens. Then she turned and disappeared into the rain and trees, leaving me alone with only the sound of the falling water. I know what I saw. Despite the rain, despite the pain, despite everything, I know what I saw. It was a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it. A creature that science says cannot exist, standing there watching me with eyes that held more awareness than any animal I've ever photographed. My rational mind tried to reject it, tried to come up with alternative explanations, but there was nothing that fit. A bear doesn't stand upright like that, doesn't have that face, doesn't move with that kind of deliberate grace. A person in a costume wouldn't be out in this remote location during a rainstorm. What I saw was real. The rain continued through the night and into the next morning. I was in bad shape by then, shivering constantly, my thoughts becoming fuzzy and confused. The infection in my leg was spreading, angry red streaks creeping up past my knee. I was running out of water because the creek had become too muddy to drink from safely, and my food was gone. I could feel my body starting to shut down, systems failing one by one as resources ran out. I must have lost consciousness at some point that morning, because the next thing I remember is waking to the sensation of being moved. Strong arms were lifting me, cradling me against something warm and soft. The smell was overwhelming, that same musk and pine scent I'd detected before, but now mixed with something almost comforting, like the smell of a winter coat that's been packed away with cedar chips. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt impossibly heavy. I could feel movement, a swaying rhythm like being carried by someone walking. Then darkness took me again. When I next woke, I was somewhere dry. The constant sound of rain was muted, filtering through from somewhere outside. I was lying on something soft, bedding of some kind, and there was warmth nearby. A fire crackling somewhere to my left. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I might see, but also too weak to care as much as I should have. I was in a cave. That was my first coherent thought. The walls around me were rough stone, curved like the inside of a dome, rising to a ceiling about 12 feet overhead. Light came from a small fire burning in a pit near the center of the cave, the smoke rising toward a natural opening in the roof that served as a chimney. The bedding I was lying on turned out to be a thick layer of pine branches covered with some kind of dried grass and moss. Surprisingly comfortable given the circumstances. She was sitting across the fire from me watching. The Sasquatch I'd seen at the gorge, unmistakably the same one. In the firelight, I could see her more clearly now. Her face was remarkable, not quite human, but not quite ape either. Something ancient and evolved beyond both. Her eyes reflected the firelight, dark and deep, filled with an intelligence that made me feel like she was reading my thoughts. Her fur was dry now. I could see that it was a rich chocolate brown, with threads of silver around her face and down her arms, suggesting age and experience. I should have been terrified. I was alone in a cave with a creature that could probably tear me apart without effort. Unable to run, unable to fight, completely helpless. But something about the way she was watching me, something about the care that had clearly gone into bringing me here and making me comfortable, made fear seem unnecessary. Whatever her intentions were, they didn't seem to be predatory. She must have seen that I was awake because she moved then, rising to her feet in one fluid motion that belied her massive size. She crossed to where I was lying and knelt beside me, bringing her face closer to mine. Up close, I could see every detail. The fine hairs that covered her skin, the lines around her eyes that suggested years of experience. The slight movement of her nostrils as she breathed in my scent. She reached out one enormous hand and touched my forehead gently, the way a mother might check a child for fever. Her touch was surprisingly soft, her skin warm and leathery. Then she spoke. The word that came out of her mouth was rough and guttural, but unmistakably a word, a human word. She said water. I thought I was hallucinating at first, that the fever and pain and exhaustion had finally broken my mind completely. But then she reached beside her and picked up something, a wooden bowl filled with liquid. She helped me sit up slightly, supporting my head with one massive hand while holding the bowl to my lips with the other. The water was clean and cold and tasted like the sweetest thing I'd ever drunk. After I'd drunk my fill, she eased me back down onto the bedding and moved away to tend the fire. I lay there trying to process what had just happened. She had spoken, a single word, but a word nonetheless. A Sasquatch had looked at me, assessed my needs, and communicated using human language. Everything I thought I knew about the world, about evolution, about the boundaries between human and animal, was suddenly called into question. Over the next several hours, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time I woke, she was there, tending the fire, or sitting quietly watching me, or doing something with plants and herbs I couldn't quite make out. At some point, she came to examine my leg. She unwrapped the crude bandaging I'd fashioned days ago and studied the wound with what I can only describe as clinical interest. The infection was bad. I knew that without looking. I could feel the heat radiating from my skin, could smell the sweet, sickly smell that meant things were going wrong. She disappeared for a while after that examination. I lay alone in the cave, watching the fire burn down, wondering if she'd abandoned me. But she returned carrying an armful of plants, things with leaves and roots and stems that I didn't recognize. She sat by the fire and began processing them, grinding some between her palms, mashing others between rocks, heating still others over the flames until they became soft and pulpy. When she was finished, she came to me with a poultice of some kind, a paste made from the plants she'd gathered. She applied it to my leg with surprising gentleness, covering the worst of the infection with the cool green mixture. It stung at first, a burning sensation that made me gasp, but then it became soothing, numbing like ice on a sunburn. She wrapped my leg in leaves, secured with strips of bark, creating a bandage that was more effective than anything I'd managed on my own. I tried to speak then, tried to say thank you, but my voice came out as a croak. She looked at me, and I saw something like understanding in her eyes. She touched her chest once, a gesture that seemed significant somehow, then went back to tending the fire. I fell asleep watching her work, wondering if I was dreaming, hoping I would wake up and find that all of this was real. Days passed in that cave. I don't know how many exactly. Time became fluid and hard to track. She cared for me with a patience and dedication that was almost maternal. She brought me water multiple times a day, always in the same wooden bowl that she must have carved herself at some point. She brought me food too. At first, just berries and roots and nuts, things that were easy to eat and digest. Later, as I got stronger, she brought meat, small animals that she'd caught and cooked over the fire. The meat was gamey but nourishing, and I ate everything she gave me without question. My leg began to improve almost immediately after she started treating it. The angry red streaks faded, the swelling went down, the heat dissipated. Whatever was in that poultice, it worked better than any antibiotic I'd ever used. The infection retreated, and the bone began to knit. I could feel it healing, a strange itching sensation deep in the tissue that meant things were coming back together. As I got stronger, she started communicating more. Her vocabulary was limited but growing, and I realized that she was learning as much as she was teaching. She would point at things and say their names in her rough voice: water, fire, food, leg, pain, and watch my face to see if she had it right. I would nod or shake my head, and she would adjust accordingly. Sometimes she would try new words, testing them out, seeing how I reacted: tree, rock, bird, sleep. I started teaching her more words in return, pointing at things and speaking slowly, watching as she worked to form the sounds with a mouth that wasn't designed for human speech. She learned quickly, faster than I would have thought possible. Within what I estimated was about a week, she could communicate basic concepts with reasonable accuracy, not sentences, not yet, but words strung together in ways that conveyed meaning. You need water, fire, keep warm, leg better now. But it was what she taught me that truly changed my understanding of everything. One night, after I'd been in the cave for perhaps 2 weeks, strong enough by then to sit up on my own and even hobble a few steps with a makeshift crutch she'd fashioned from a branch, she sat across from me and began to really talk. Not just basic words about immediate needs, but ideas, concepts, truths that she wanted me to understand. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, sometimes making up compound words or using gestures when language failed her. But the message came through clearly despite the broken syntax. Humans, she said, pointing vaguely in a direction that I assumed meant civilization, humans forgetting important things, old things, how to live right. I asked her what she meant, speaking slowly and simply so she could understand. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Then she began to explain, and what she told me over the following weeks fundamentally altered my perception of humanity, of nature, of my own place in the world. There are more of them, she explained, more of her kind, scattered throughout the wild places of the world, in deep forests and remote mountains and hidden valleys. They've been here longer than humans, she said, watching from the edges, observing as human civilization rose and spread across the land. They remember when humans were different, when we lived as part of the forest rather than apart from it. They remember when we understood our place in the web of life, when we took only what we needed and gave back what we could. She told me that her people, if I can call them that, have a duty. They are caretakers, guardians of the wild places that remain. They maintain the balance between species, encourage diversity, protect the ancient ecosystems that modern humans have largely forgotten exist. They understand connections that our science is only beginning to grasp, relationships between plants and animals, and soil and water that span centuries and create resilience against change. I asked her why they hide, why they don't reveal themselves and try to help us understand. She looked at me with those deep, intelligent eyes and said something that I've never forgotten. She said that long ago, when humans first began to change, to separate themselves from nature and claim dominion over it, her people tried to communicate. They tried to teach, to guide, to help humans remember what they were losing. But humans were afraid of what they didn't understand. They attacked what was different, destroyed what they couldn't control, silenced voices that challenged their growing belief that they were masters of the world rather than members of it. So her people retreated. They moved deeper into the wilderness, further from human settlements, watching and waiting. They hoped that humans would eventually remember on their own, would recognize the damage they were causing and choose a different path. But the forgetting only deepened, she said. Each generation knew less than the one before. The old knowledge, the understanding of connection and balance and responsibility, faded until it was almost completely gone. She told me about the forests, about how they're not just collections of trees, but living communities, networks of relationships and exchanges that span entire mountains. The trees, she explained, talk to each other through their roots, sharing nutrients and information and warnings. The animals serve as messengers, carrying seeds and distributing nutrients, their movements choreographed by instincts that reflect millennia of evolution. Even the water has a role, carrying minerals and microbes, shaping the land through patient persistence, connecting distant places in ways humans rarely consider. I asked her how she knew all this, how her people had acquired such understanding. She said they learned by watching, by being patient, by paying attention over generations. Humans, she said, are always in a hurry. They want to understand everything quickly, to reduce it to simple explanations, to control it. But the deep truths of the natural world can't be rushed. They reveal themselves slowly, over lifetimes, over centuries, to those willing to watch and wait and listen. There was a sadness in her voice when she talked about what humans are doing to the earth. Not anger, not judgment, just a profound sorrow at watching something beautiful being destroyed. She spoke of the forests being cut, the rivers being poisoned, the air being filled with things that shouldn't be there. She talked about species disappearing, entire kinds of life winking out of existence, taking with them knowledge and relationships that could never be recovered. She described the balance being disrupted, systems that had worked for millions of years suddenly breaking down, because too many pieces had been removed. But what struck me most was that she didn't blame humans for this destruction. She saw it as a kind of collective illness, a forgetting that had spread through human culture like a disease. Humans don't know, she said. They've forgotten that they're part of everything, that what they do to the earth they do to themselves. They think they're separate, above, in control. But they're not. They're woven into the same web as everything else, and when they tear that web, they tear themselves. I spent hours talking with her, learning her way of seeing the world. She taught me to listen to the forest, to hear the messages in bird calls and insect sounds, and the creaking of branches. She showed me how to read tracks, not just as signs of animal passage, but as stories, narratives of behavior and relationship and community. She explained how to identify plants not just by their appearance, but by their role in the ecosystem, how they interacted with other species, what they contributed to the whole. One day, when I was strong enough, she led me outside the cave for the first time since she'd brought me there. We emerged onto a narrow ledge, overlooking a valley I didn't recognize, dense forest stretching in every direction, mountains rising in the distance, a river glinting silver far below. The beauty of it took my breath away. Not just the visual spectacle, but the sense of life, of interconnection, of purpose that seemed to emanate from every tree and rock and stream. She stood beside me, looking out at the same view, and I realized she was seeing something different from what I was seeing. Where I saw a pretty landscape, she saw a community, a vast living system with countless members all playing their parts. She pointed out things I would have missed, a particular stand of cedars that was home to a family of owls, a meadow below where elk gathered in early morning, the shapes in the forest canopy that revealed where streams ran underground. The whole valley, she explained, was connected. Nothing existed in isolation. Everything affected everything else. We went back into the cave as the sun set, and she cooked dinner while I sat watching, trying to absorb everything I'd learned. My leg was healing well, strong enough now that I could walk short distances with just a slight limp. In a few more days, I knew I would be well enough to leave, to try to find my way back to civilization. The thought filled me with complex emotions, longing for home, mixed with reluctance to leave this place of revelation. That night, she told me what she wanted me to do. She said that she had chosen to save me for a reason, that she had been watching me for several days before my accident, had seen something in me that suggested I might be ready to hear the truth. Not everyone was ready, she explained. Most humans were too deeply asleep, too caught up in their forgetting to wake, even when shown the reality of things. But some, a few, were different. They had the capacity to remember, to understand, to help others begin the journey back toward balance. She wanted me to be a messenger, not to prove that her people existed. She emphasized that strongly. She had no desire to be discovered, to have humans invading the wild places, looking for creatures to capture or study or exploit. The message wasn't about her. The message was about humanity's relationship with the natural world, about the urgent need to remember what had been forgotten before it was too late. I asked her what I should tell people, how I should share this message. She was quiet for a long time, gazing into the fire. Then she spoke, and her words were the clearest I'd ever heard from her, as if everything she'd been teaching me had been leading to this moment. She said, to tell humans that they are part of a living world, not separate from it, not above it. Tell them that what they do to the earth, they do to themselves, that the health of the forests and rivers and oceans is their own health, not a separate thing to be managed or exploited, but an extension of their own bodies and spirits. Tell them that every species that disappears takes something irreplaceable with it, knowledge and relationships and possibilities that can never be recovered. Tell them that the wild places need protection, not because they're nice to look at or good for recreation, but because they're essential, the lungs and kidneys and immune system of a living planet. Tell them, she said, that there's still time. The damage is severe but not complete. The systems are stressed but not broken. Healing is possible if humans choose it, if enough of them wake up and remember and start living differently. Tell them that they have a responsibility, that their intelligence and abilities are meant to be used for caretaking, not conquest, for healing, not exploitation. Tell them that they're not alone, she added. Tell them that there are others, intelligences they haven't recognized, watching and hoping. Tell them that the wild places still have their guardians, beings who remember the old ways and maintain the ancient balances. Tell them that help is available if they're willing to accept it, guidance if they're willing to listen, hope if they're willing to change. She looked at me with those deep, wise eyes, and I saw centuries of patience there, millennia of watching and waiting and hoping. I saw sadness at all that had been lost and might still be lost. But I also saw hope, fragile but persistent, the same hope that drives plants to grow through concrete and animals to adapt to changing conditions and life to persist against all odds. I asked her if she thought humans would listen. She said she didn't know. She said that humans have surprised her people before, sometimes in terrible ways and sometimes in beautiful ones. Humans have the capacity for both great destruction and great healing, she said. Which capacity prevails depends on choices, individual choices made by millions of people every day. Each choice matters, she emphasized. Each act of remembering, each gesture toward balance, each decision to take less and give more, it all matters. The accumulated weight of those choices determines the future. The next morning, she led me out of the cave and along a series of trails I never could have found on my own. We walked for most of the day, stopping to rest when my leg needed it, sharing a simple meal of dried meat and berries. By late afternoon, we had reached a ridge overlooking a valley I recognized, the same valley where my truck was parked at a trailhead about 5 miles below. She stopped at the edge of the trees and looked at me, and I realized this was where we would part. I didn't want to leave, didn't want to return to a world that suddenly seemed shallow and distracted and asleep. But I also understood that my purpose now was out there, not in the wilderness, not in hiding. My purpose was to carry her message into the human world, to do what I could to help people remember. I tried to thank her, but words seemed inadequate. She touched my face gently, her massive hand almost tender, and said something I'll never forget. She said, "You teach now, help humans remember. We watch, we hope, we wait." Then she turned and walked back into the forest, disappearing into the shadows so quickly and completely that within seconds I couldn't see any trace of her. I stood there for a long time, looking at the trees where she had vanished, feeling the weight of what I'd experienced and what I'd been asked to do. The hike down to the trailhead took me the rest of the afternoon, my healing leg protesting by the time I reached my truck. Everything was as I'd left it weeks ago, covered in fallen leaves but otherwise untouched. I drove to the nearest town and walked into the ranger station, and the look on the ranger's face when he saw me told me just how long I'd been gone. "Nearly 3 weeks," he said. 3 weeks since I'd failed to check in at my expected time. Search parties had been sent out, had searched the area where I was supposed to be, had found no trace. They'd been about to give up, to declare me lost. I told them a version of what happened, an edited version. I said I'd fallen, broken my leg, found shelter in a cave, managed to treat my injuries with natural remedies, and wait until I was healed enough to hike out. They accepted this explanation more or less, though they seemed puzzled by how well my leg had healed given the apparent severity of the break. The hospital x-rays confirmed that the bone had been fractured and had somehow knit back together perfectly, something the doctors said should have taken months of treatment and physical therapy. I went back to my life after that, but everything was different. The world I'd taken for granted now seemed strange and urgent. I noticed things I'd overlooked before, the ways humans interact with nature, the casual destruction that we barely even register. I saw the disconnection everywhere, in the way people moved through the world without seeing it, in the way we treat animals and plants and ecosystems as resources rather than relations. I started changing the way I worked. My photography had always been about capturing beautiful images of wildlife and wilderness, but now I understood that it could be something more. It could be a form of teaching, a way of helping people see what they were losing, what they stood to lose if they didn't change. I started including more context in my presentations, talking about ecosystems and connections and relationships, trying to help people understand that the animals and landscapes in my photos weren't just pretty pictures, but members of a community we all belong to. I also started speaking more directly about conservation, about the urgent need to protect what remains of the wild world. I gave talks at schools and community centers, at conferences and gatherings, anywhere people would listen. I told them about the forests and the rivers and the animals, about the web of connections that sustains all life, about the damage being done and the healing that's still possible. I never mentioned what really happened to me in those mountains, never spoke of the Sasquatch or the cave or the things she taught me. As she said, most people aren't ready for that truth. They'd dismiss it, ridicule it, use it to undermine everything else I was trying to say. But the message itself, the core truth she wanted me to share, that I could tell, And I found that people were more receptive than I'd expected. Something is shifting in human consciousness, a growing awareness that we can't keep living the way we've been living, that the earth has limits and we're approaching them. More people are asking questions, seeking alternatives, wanting to be part of the solution rather than the problem. The seeds of change are sprouting slowly but surely. These days, I spend as much time in the wilderness as I can, not just to photograph it, but to be part of it, to remember what I learned in that cave. I've developed a sensitivity I didn't have before, an ability to feel the forest around me in a deeper way. I notice things other people miss, the subtle signs of health and illness in an ecosystem, the stories told by tracks and scat and feeding patterns, the language of birds and insects that I'm slowly learning to understand. Sometimes, when I'm deep in the backcountry, far from trails and other humans, I catch that smell. Musky and wild, pine and earth, and something uniquely other. I know she's nearby then, or one of her kind, watching from the shadows, checking on the human who learned to listen. I never see them on these occasions, they're too skilled at remaining hidden, but I feel their presence, and that's enough. It reminds me that I'm not alone in this work, that there are others doing their part to maintain the balance. I've changed my entire approach to being in the world. I see everything differently now. When I walk through a forest, I'm not just moving through a collection of trees. I'm passing through a community of interconnected beings, each playing their role in a vast system of exchange and support. When I encounter animals, I don't see them as creatures separate from myself, but as relatives, fellow travelers on this planet, members of the same family of life. When I look at a river or an ocean or a mountain, I see not just scenery, but vital organs in the body of the earth, essential to the health of everything else. I've become what she asked me to become, a bridge between the human world and the wild world. In my small way, I'm teaching people to remember what they've forgotten, to see what they've overlooked, to understand what they've ignored. It's slow work, frustrating sometimes, often seeming futile in the face of the destruction that continues all around us. But I keep going because I remember what she told me, that each choice matters, that the accumulated weight of many small choices determines the future. The message I was asked to share is simple, but profound. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it, woven into it, dependent on it. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The health of the forests and rivers and oceans is our own health, not something separate to be managed or exploited. Every species that disappears takes something irreplaceable with it. The wild places need protection, not because they're nice, but because they're necessary. We have a responsibility to be caretakers, not conquerors, healers, not exploiters. And there's still time, if enough of us wake up and remember and choose differently. That's what she wanted me to share. That's the truth I learned during those weeks in the wilderness, broken and helpless, cared for by a being that science says cannot exist. It's not about proving that Sasquatches are real, though they are. It's not about convincing skeptics or producing evidence for scientists to debate. It's about the message itself, the truth about connection and balance and responsibility that humans desperately need to remember. I think about her often, my teacher, my healer, my guide. I think about the patience she showed, caring for a stranger who belonged to a species that has done so much damage to the world she protects. I think about the hope she expressed, fragile but persistent, that humans might yet choose a different path. I think about her people, scattered through the wild places, watching and waiting, maintaining the old ways while hoping we'll remember ours. I never got her name, if her people even use names in the way we do. I never learned where exactly I was during those weeks in her care. The cave could be anywhere in those mountains, hidden in a maze of ridges and valleys that I couldn't navigate again even if I tried. That's how she wants it, I know. Her people's survival depends on remaining hidden, on avoiding the discovery that would bring humans flooding into their last refuges. But sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in my tent under the stars, I feel a connection that transcends distance. I feel linked to her somehow, to all of her kind, part of a web of awareness that spans the wild places of the world. It's probably my imagination, probably just the memory of what I experienced playing tricks on my mind. But it feels real, and in a way, that's what matters. The feeling of connection, of belonging to something larger than myself, of having a role and a purpose in the great web of life. That's what she gave me along with my life. And it's the greatest gift I've ever received. I've never told anyone the full truth of what happened to me. I'm writing this account not knowing if anyone will ever read it, or if anyone who reads it will believe it. She was right that most people aren't ready. They'd dismiss it as fantasy or mental illness, would focus on demanding proof rather than hearing the message. But I'm telling it now because somehow it feels important to record, to have the truth written down somewhere, even if it never reaches a wide audience. The Sasquatch exists. I've seen one, been touched by one, spoken with one. I've learned from an ancient intelligence that predates human civilization, that understands things about the natural world that we've forgotten or never knew. And the truth she wanted me to share is more urgent now than ever because we're running out of time. Climate change is accelerating. Species are disappearing at rates not seen since the dinosaurs died. Forests are burning and being cut. Oceans are acidifying and filling with plastic. The systems that sustain all life, including human life, are being pushed to their limits and beyond. If we don't change course, and soon, the damage may become irreversible, the loss is permanent, the future foreclosed, but change is possible. I see it happening, slowly but surely. More people are waking up, remembering, choosing differently. The environmental movement is growing and deepening, moving beyond surface concerns about recycling and carbon footprints to grapple with the fundamental question of humanity's relationship with the natural world. Indigenous peoples around the world are reclaiming their traditional knowledge and demanding that it be respected. Scientists are discovering what traditional peoples have always known, that everything in nature is connected in ways we're only beginning to understand. The tide is beginning to turn, she told me on one of our last days together, slowly, painfully, but turning. I've come to believe that's true. Not because I'm optimistic by nature, I'm actually quite pessimistic about many things, but because I've seen the seeds of change sprouting, felt the shift in consciousness that's beginning to spread through human culture. Something is changing. Whether it will change fast enough, deep enough, widely enough to make a difference, I don't know. No one knows. But the possibility is there, and the possibility is worth fighting for. So I go on with my work, teaching and sharing and trying to help people see what they've overlooked. I protect what I can, speak up when I can, choose differently where I can. I'm not perfect at it, no one is. I still participate in the modern world with all its compromises and contradictions. I still drive a car and use electricity and consume resources that come from places and processes I'd rather not think about. But I'm trying, doing my part, planting seeds. And I carry her message with me always, the truth she wanted me to share. We are part of this world, not separate from it. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The wild places need protection. We are meant to be caretakers. There's still time. These simple truths, if enough people took them to heart and lived by them, could change everything. Could heal what's been damaged, restore what's been lost, create a future worth having. That's what I learned in that cave. That's what she gave me along with my life. And every day I try to be worthy of the gift. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if her people revealed themselves, if they stepped out of the shadows and made their existence undeniable. Would it shock humans into recognition, into understanding that the world is stranger and richer and more mysterious than we've allowed ourselves to believe? Would it help us remember that we're not the only intelligence on this planet, not the only beings with awareness and purpose and worth, but I understand why they remain hidden. I've seen how humans react to what they don't understand, the fear and hostility and desire to control. If her people revealed themselves, they'd be hunted, captured, studied, exploited. Their last refuges would be invaded, their secrets extracted, their freedom destroyed. The very existence that has allowed them to serve as guardians for so long would be ended. No. Hiding is the right choice, the necessary choice. Their gift to the world must remain anonymous, unrecognized, unproven. What they offer instead is the message, the truth about connection and balance and responsibility. And they offer it through messengers like me, ordinary humans who've been granted a glimpse behind the veil and asked to share what they've seen. I don't know how many others there are like me, people who've encountered her kind and been changed by it. Maybe many, maybe few. We don't advertise ourselves, don't form clubs or associations, don't compare notes. We just do our work, spreading the message in our own ways, trying to help humans remember. I've been back to those mountains many times since my experience, hiking the trails I know and exploring new ones. I've never found the cave again. Never seen her or any of her kind clearly, but I feel them sometimes, sense their presence watching from the trees, and I take comfort in that. They're still there, still guarding the wild places, still hoping humans will wake up. Their patience is immense, spanning generations and centuries, waiting for us to remember what we've forgotten. The hardest part of carrying this message is knowing how urgent it is while being unable to make people understand that urgency. Every day that passes without sufficient change, more damage is done. More forests fall, more species disappear, more carbon accumulates in the atmosphere. The window for preventing catastrophic change grows narrower. And yet I can't force people to care, can't make them understand if they're not ready. All I can do is keep speaking, keep teaching, keep hoping that enough people will hear and respond. She told me once that humans have a choice, that we're at a turning point, and the direction we choose will determine everything. Will we keep forgetting, keep destroying, keep separating ourselves from the living world until there's nothing left worth having? Or will we remember, wake up, come back into balance, and take our proper place as caretakers of this beautiful, interconnected earth? I've made my choice. I choose to remember. I choose to care. I choose to be part of the healing, and I hope with everything I am that enough other humans make the same choice before it's too late. While there's still time to restore the balance, while there are still teachers in the wilderness willing to guide us back to the truth we forgot. That's what she wanted me to share. That's what I learned during those weeks in the wilderness. Broken and helpless, cared for by a creature that shouldn't exist but does. That's the truth I'm living now, every single day. And it has changed everything. I think back to who I was before that fall, before the cave, before her. I was a good photographer, respected in my field, passionate about wilderness and wildlife. But I was also asleep in important ways, going through the motions of appreciation without truly understanding what I was appreciating. I loved nature without recognizing that I was part of it. I valued wildlife without seeing that their lives and mine were intertwined. I photographed ecosystems without comprehending that I was photographing the systems that sustained my own existence. Now I see differently. Every photograph I take is a portrait of family, a documentation of relatives I share this planet with. Every landscape is a self-portrait in a sense, an image of the body that supports my body, the life that enables my life. This understanding has made my work better, I think, more alive, more connected to something real. People respond to my photographs differently now, though they probably couldn't say why. There's a quality of intimacy in them that wasn't there before. a sense of relationship rather than mere observation. The scientific community has its own ways of discovering what traditional peoples and hidden guardians have long known. Every year, new research reveals more about the complexity of natural systems, the intelligence of non-human beings, the deep connections that bind all life together. Scientists have discovered that trees communicate through underground fungal networks, sharing nutrients and information across vast distances. They've found that animals have cultures, passing knowledge down through generations in ways that were once thought uniquely human. They've documented the interdependence of species in ecosystems, showing how the removal of one species can cascade through the whole system. All of this is confirmation of what she told me, what her people have understood for millennia. The scientific method is finally catching up to ancient wisdom, proving through careful study what intuition and observation and patience had already revealed. This convergence gives me hope. It suggests that the truth she wanted me to share isn't just spiritual or mystical, it's practical and verifiable. The interconnection of all things isn't a belief to be accepted on faith. It's a reality that can be demonstrated, measured, tested. Not that the spiritual dimension is unimportant. There's something about being in a truly wild place that affects the soul in ways that science struggles to capture. The awe of standing beneath ancient trees, the peace of listening to a stream, the joy of watching animals in their element. These experiences touch something deep in us, something that perhaps remembers a time when humans lived closer to the earth. This spiritual connection to nature is part of what we've lost, part of what needs to be recovered, and it can't be reduced to data or reproduced in a laboratory. She seemed to understand this dual nature of the truth, the way it has both practical and spiritual dimensions. When she spoke about the forests and the rivers and the animals, she moved seamlessly between what we might call scientific facts and what we might call mystical perceptions. The two weren't separate for her, weren't different categories of knowledge. They were just different aspects of the same reality, different ways of describing the same interconnected, alive, meaningful world. I've tried to carry that integration into my own work and life. When I teach people about ecosystems, I include both the measurable facts and the experiential realities. I talk about food webs and nutrient cycles, but I also talk about the feeling of being in a healthy forest, the sense of aliveness that pervades a truly wild place. I show people data about declining populations and habitat loss, but I also take them outside to experience what's being lost, to feel it in their bodies, rather than just understanding it in their minds. This approach seems to work better than either alone. Pure facts can leave people cold, unmoved, disconnected from what the facts mean for their lives. Pure experience can leave people without the framework to understand what they're experiencing or the knowledge to act on it. But when you combine them, when you give people both the data and the direct encounter, something shifts. They begin to understand not just intellectually but viscerally that this matters, that they're part of it, that their choices make a difference. I've been doing this work for several years now, since I came down from those mountains. It's changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more patient than I used to be, more willing to take the long view. She taught me that real change happens slowly, across generations, through accumulated choices and awakening consciousness. Rushing it doesn't work, forcing it doesn't work. You plant seeds and tend them and trust the process. I'm also more humble than I used to be. Before, I thought I understood a lot about nature because I'd spent so much time photographing it. Now I know that I understand very little, that the natural world is far more complex and mysterious and intelligent than I can grasp. This humility makes me a better observer and a better teacher. I approach everything with curiosity rather than certainty, with wonder rather than expertise. And I'm more connected than I used to be. Not just to nature, though that connection has deepened immeasurably. Also to other people, even people I disagree with or don't understand. I see now that we're all part of the same web, all members of the same species struggling to find our way. The people who destroy the environment aren't evil, mostly. They're asleep, disconnected, caught up in systems that make destruction easy and protection hard. The work isn't to judge them, but to help them wake up, to make better choices easier, to shift the whole system in a healthier direction. My relationships with other environmental activists have also changed. Before, I often felt frustrated with people who didn't see things the way I did, didn't act with sufficient urgency, didn't understand what was at stake. Now, I have more compassion for the difficulty of the work, more appreciation for every effort, no matter how small. We're all doing what we can with what we have. The important thing is to keep going, keep trying, keep holding on to hope, even when it seems futile. There have been difficult moments, times when the weight of the message has felt too heavy, when the urgency of the situation has overwhelmed my capacity for patience. I've had nights when I've lain awake, wondering if any of it matters, if humans will ever change fast enough, if the damage will prove irreversible despite everything we do. In those moments, I remember her face, her eyes, the centuries of patience they contained. If she and her kind can maintain hope across generations, across millennia, then surely I can maintain it across decades. I also remember what she said about small choices accumulating. Every person who wakes up to the reality of our situation matters. Every choice to consume less, protect more, give back to the earth matters. Every seed planted and every child taught matters. The future isn't determined by forces beyond our control. It's shaped by billions of decisions made by billions of people, each one contributing to the overall direction. My job isn't to ensure a particular outcome. My job is to make my contribution, to help others make theirs, and to trust that the accumulation will be enough. The Sasquatch told me that her people are watching, hoping, waiting. They've seen humans at our worst and at our best. They know what we're capable of, the destruction and the healing, the forgetting and the remembering. They don't know which way we'll go, she said. Nobody does. But they're rooting for us in their silent, hidden way. They want us to succeed, to wake up, to come back into balance, not just for the Earth's sake, though they care deeply about the Earth, also for our sake. Because they recognize something in us that's worth saving, a spark of consciousness that could light the way if we'd only let it. I carry that faith with me now, faith in human potential even amid human destruction. It's not naive faith, not blind optimism. I see clearly how bad things are, how much worse they could get, how narrow the path to a better future has become. But I also see the seeds sprouting, the consciousness shifting, the possibilities opening. The future is genuinely uncertain, and that uncertainty is terrifying but also liberating. It means we have agency. It means our choices matter. It means the story isn't written yet. When I work with young people, as I often do now through school programs and internships, I'm struck by how many of them already understand what my generation has struggled to grasp. They've grown up with climate change as a reality, with ecological crisis as background to their lives. Many of them feel the urgency in their bones, the imperative to change. They're not interested in incrementalism or compromise. They want transformation, and they're willing to work for it. This gives me enormous hope. The awakening is accelerating in the young. They're looking for guidance, for knowledge, for tools to make change happen. They're hungry for connection to nature, for experiences that break through the digital fog that surrounds them. When I take groups of young people into the wilderness and help them see what I see, feel what I feel, understand what I understand, I can watch the transformation happen in real time. Eyes open, hearts open, consciousness shifts. This, I've come to believe, is how the tide turns. Not through political victories or technological fixes, though those matter too. Through consciousness, through awakening, through the accumulated weight of many minds opening to the same truth. When enough people truly understand that they're part of nature rather than separate from it, when enough people feel that connection in their bodies and souls, the choices that follow will naturally shift in healthier directions. You don't have to convince someone to protect what they love. They do it instinctively. She knew this, my teacher in the cave. That's why the message focused on consciousness rather than policy, on remembering rather than reforming. Change the way people see themselves and their relationship to the earth, and the behaviors will follow. The external work of protection and restoration matters, but it's downstream from the internal work of awakening and connection. Both are necessary, both are happening, both need to accelerate. I think about her often, my Sasquatch teacher. I wonder where she is right now, what she's doing, whether she thinks about me the way I think about her. I wonder if she's seen signs of the change we talked about, evidence that her hope and her patience are being rewarded. I wonder if she knows that I've kept my promise, that I'm spreading the message as best I can, that I'm trying to help humans remember. I like to think she knows. I like to think that in whatever way her people track the world, through senses and perceptions I can barely imagine, she's aware that I'm doing my part. I like to think she takes some satisfaction in that, some validation that her choice to save me and teach me wasn't wasted. I'd like to think I've been a good investment of her time and energy, that I've done justice to the gift she gave me. The years since my experience have been the most meaningful of my life. Before, I had a career I enjoyed, work I was proud of. Now I have a purpose, something that gets me up in the morning and keeps me going through the hard days. I'm not just taking photographs anymore. I'm participating in something larger, a great awakening that may or may not succeed, but is worth everything I can give it. And through it all, the message remains, simple, profound, urgent. We are part of nature, not separate from it. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The wild places need protection. We are meant to be caretakers. There's still time. This is what she wanted me to share. This is the truth I learned in a hidden cave, cared for by a being that science says cannot exist. And I will keep sharing it for as long as I have breath. For as long as there's any chance that it will help, for as long as the memory of her eyes, deep and wise and hoping, remains with me. The Sasquatch saved my life, but more than that, she showed me what my life is for. And that is a gift beyond any value, a purpose beyond any measure. So I continue. I teach, I speak, I share, I protect what I can, and encourage others to do the same. I work with young people who give me hope and elders who give me wisdom. I walk in the wild places when I can, feeling the connection, sensing the presence of guardians who never show themselves, but who I know are there. And late at night, lying under the stars, I send my gratitude out into the darkness. Thank you, teacher. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for showing me the truth. Thank you for believing I was worth it. I'm trying, I'm doing my part, I'm planting seeds. I hope wherever you are, you know. I hope you know that your message is spreading slowly but surely through me and through others like me. I hope you know that the tide is turning, that humans are beginning to remember, that there's still a chance. I hope you know that your patience and your faith and your hope are not in vain. And I hope, in whatever way your kind experiences hope, that you're hopeful too. Because there's reason to be, despite everything, despite the damage and the loss and the destruction that continues, despite the difficulty of awakening a sleeping species, despite the odds against transformation happening fast enough, deep enough, widely enough, there's reason to hope. Because consciousness is shifting, because seeds are sprouting, because young people are waking up in droves, because the truth about connection and balance and responsibility is making its way into more and more minds, because the future isn't written yet. There's reason to hope, and as long as there's reason, I'll keep going. I'll keep carrying your message. I'll keep trying to help humans remember. That's my promise to you, teacher. That's what I learned in your cave, broken and helpless, cared for by your hands. That's the truth I'm living now, and it has changed everything. The forests still stand, or many of them do. The rivers still run, though many are polluted. The animals still roam, though their numbers are diminished. Life persists on this beautiful planet, diverse and resilient and always seeking balance. There's still something left worth saving. There are still wild places worth protecting. There are still beings, seen and unseen, doing the work of caretaking. And there are more humans joining them every day. More people waking up, more people remembering, more people choosing to be part of the healing. This is what I've witnessed in the years since I came down from those mountains. This is what I offer as evidence that hope is justified. Not certainty, never certainty, but possibility. Real, tangible, growing possibility. That's worth everything. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what keeps me going on the hardest days. A Sasquatch saved my life and showed me my purpose. I'm a messenger now, a bridge between worlds. A voice for those who cannot speak in human languages. I'm imperfect at this role, full of limitations and contradictions. But I'm trying. I'm doing what I can. And I believe with everything I am that it matters. That's the end of my story. Or rather, that's where my story continues. Every day is a new chapter, a new opportunity to share the message, to help someone wake up, to plant another seed. The story doesn't end until the larger story ends, until humanity has made its choice, until the question of our future is answered. I don't know what that answer will be. No one does. But I know what I'm working toward. I know what choice I want us to make. I know what future I'm trying to help create. A future where humans remember their place in the web of life. A future where wild places are protected and restored. A future where caretaking replaces exploitation. A future where the great family of life on Earth thrives together. That's what she wanted. That's what I want. And that's what I'll keep working toward for as long as I have the chance. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. Thank you for being someone who might, in some small way, join in the work. The message is simple. We are part of nature. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The wild places need us to protect them. We are meant to be caretakers. There's still time. Go out into the wild when you can. Feel the connection. Remember what you've forgotten. Let it change you. Let it change everything.